I was 8 years old when I started hunting arrowheads. My father and my brother and I were down at the river. We went fishing down there for catfish, and the field was plowed along there, and there was a stone laying there with a piece of flint. I don't know. I picked it up. It was colored. It was really nice looking stuff. I went, "What is this stuff, Dad?" He said, "It's flint. The Indians made arrowheads out of it." And I said, "You think you could find any here?" And he said, "Yeah. If you got to come down and hunt." So the next day I went down there and I walked around and I was picking up little sharp pieces of stone and looking at it and going, this could be something, and this could be something. Pick up another. This could be something. I don't know. And walked along and the first arrowhead I saw laying there, I knew. As soon as I saw it, it was like an electric shock to me, and I went to my knees and I went, "That's an arrowhead. I know that's an arrowhead." And I picked it up and I sat there in just amazement of it. And ever since then, I was hooked on it. I was down there as many days as I could get. I was down there. I played along the river anyway all my life down there, making rafts. But the arrowhead thing really bit me, and I had it all my life. And I still get the same excitement and shock from finding one. It never went away. The story on the arrowheads is most of them came from this area, within 2 or 3 counties, most of them from Allglaze County, and a lot of them Jim and I found. As I look at them, I can even remember where in the field it was at, where in the field it was at, which is really, I'm like 80 years old. I was like in my 20s, maybe 18. I remember just about every one that I found and stuff I can remember. Now a lot of them, there was some that came out of a collection of in town here. There was a man named Doreen who had a hardware store downtown, and he had a collection. Farmers would come in and sometimes couldn't pay for all the stuff they got that they needed, and he would ask them, "If you bring in some arrowheads and stuff, and then we'll call it even on a thing," and he did that. And he had a big collection of stuff they brought in. There's a few in there from that. There's all different cultures in there, and it goes back thousands of years. Nothing, it's all prehistoric, nothing Shawnee, nothing, that's all prehistoric. That's thousands, maybe the latest one, maybe 500 years. And then it goes clear back to like 10,000. I see one in particular, the red one there. That is a flint from down in Kentucky, and I can't think of the name of what I told you what it was. Carter Cave material, and it's called a turkey tail. And I was in Boy Scouts, and the Boy Scout leader understood that I was interested in that, and he came in one time with it, and he had it. And he said, "I got something for you. You might like it." And he pulled that out. I about had a heart attack. And said, "Oh my Lord!" It was incredible. I'd never seen anything that nice, and I found stuff around here, but nothing like that. And he actually found it up at Camp Lakota, up at Defiance, Ohio, when they were clearing the land for campsites for Boy Scouts, and he found it in there someplace, and he gave it to me, and I coveted that baby all my life. My brother was a reader. I was not a reader. I was down at the river all the time playing. And then later in life, he became interested in the arrowhead thing when he went to college. He took a course in archaeology thing, and he told me, he came home and he goes, what I've learned in archaeology at Kent State is all the same things you know that you've learned by yourself. You just don't know the names of the stuff. You don't know the terminology. And then later we shared. I showed him about hunting relics, and he taught me about his philosophy and stuff and book reading. I never did become a book reader, but we shared our lives, and that's how we got started. And later, when we learned about the historic artifacts, which you find with a metal detector and stuff, that's when we really clicked. This is a picture of me and my brother when we were in our 30s, and it's down in Lockington, Ohio. There was a museum down there, and Doc Southbury was the guy that had the museum. He was a doctor, and he had an old building, and that was the first place we had the stuff displayed on the thing from Fort Glaze. And these two cases, which we're holding two of the cases of the stuff that we found with the metal detector, and then all the other stuff is metal. There's all gun parts, there's knife parts, bullet, musket balls, bullets, buttons, coins, everything. Let's see. Well, anyway, then Dr. Southbury passed away, and we brought it back, and then so anyway, it's being displayed here now. Displayed on there is gun parts, a lot of gun parts, brass tacks that they put in the rifle stocks. The Indians would dress up the stock, and they liked ornamentation on the stuff, and Jew's harps that they would. Jew's harp was a musical instrument. They traded it to them. The Indians didn't play music on it. They broke the center of the thing out, so all they had was the brass outside of it, and they would polish that brass up to be like gold color. They made earrings, nose rings. They made jewelry out of it, and thimbles, sewing thimbles. They didn't sew. The squaws. They may have used some of the thimbles there, the squaws and stuff, sewing stuff, but most of that would have a hole punched in the center of the top. They put a leather thong through there, and they'd hang them in their hair. And there's a thing called tinkle cones, which was little pieces of rolled up brass and copper. They'd have cooking pots made out of copper, and they'd have them over the fire so much that the heat would expand them, contract, expand, contract, and so they'd crack. And they couldn't keep anything more, so they actually traded them trade silvers, like scissors you use. They had trade silvers, and they would cut, that copper pot was thin, they could cut that up, and they would roll it into these cones, and they would put their hair down through there and make a knot, and it would hang on there, and when they walked, they were called tinkle cones because they would rattle. What we learned over the years was with archaeology, the archaeologist doesn't tell the story. The artifacts tell the story. They won't lie. They'll tell you exactly what was there and what was not there. And there was a couple things we were kind of shocked by. One was traps, steel traps. We thought they must have traded traps to the Indians to get the hides for the trade. Maybe 4 or 5 trap parts of all the sites we found. And they got to think about it. So, well, the Indians didn't need traps. They lived here for thousands of years. All they do is tell them, you bring us these pelts and we can give you these silver ornaments and stuff. Oh, well, it was nothing for them. They knew how to get it. They didn't need steel traps, drag a big, heavy steel trap around. This is a string of trade beads that a guy that lived down along the Glaze River, his name was Hardy, and I think it was like in the 40s, 30s or 40s, I think. He was taking a walk down there along the river and found that string of beads was on a copper wire. And it must have come out, they either lost it, the wire broke, or there might have been a grave there. I don't know, and it washed out, because the river used to flood there all the time. It might have washed out, but I think maybe the wire broke and they lost the whole string, but they stayed on the copper. And the story was, Jim got the story, my brother. He went down, Mr. Hardy passed away. They were having a sale down there, and Jim went down. His wife was still alive, inquired about the beads. Heard the story, said, yeah. Well, she said, I don't know, they might be out in the garage. That'd be the only place I'd know, and if you can go out there and look around. So Jim went out and he looked all over. And the thing, there was a little metal fishing tackle box sitting there. He thought, yeah, he couldn't find him. He opened it up, and down in the bottom of it, there was, he had put the beads in the bottom of there, but there was this lure that he had, this liquid lure that you put on bait to make the track the fish, had leaked out, and they were all saturated with this sticky, gooey stuff. And Jim got them out of there, and the wire was real fragile. It still was on the original wire. Jim brought it home, and I took them in. The lab I worked in had a cleaning solution stuff, and I put them in the cleaning solution and cleaned them all up. You couldn't even see the colors on them. That stuff had soaked into them, and I cleaned them up, and I kept track of them, and then I took them off the wire, kept track of the way they were strung, and then I put them on a new copper wire, because the other one was just, it was so old, it just, you touch it and it just would break into pieces. I don't know how it even survived. And so I put it on there, and then I came home from work, I had them, and I was going to bring them over and show them to Jim, and I thought, no, the river was up and muddy, and I knew the spot where he found them. And so I knew that real close to the spot. I went down and I took them on the wire, and I had cleaned all the gunk off, but I wanted to reintroduce them to the original state that they were in on the thing, and I dipped them down in that muddy water, up and down in that muddy water a couple of times, and then brought them out, and I wanted to renew their life. And I brought them home, and I told Jim about it. That's his kind of thing. He just loved that. You put them back in the river on the thing. Yeah. We got them back to life now, Jim. Trade goods coming in from the north came all the way down through the Maumee and stuff, and by the time that stuff got to Wapak, it had been picked over. Every place they stopped, those traders, they'd trade to the Indians, and of course those first Indians, they'd take the best stuff, and then the next group would take the next best stuff until it got to Wapak. Was the last spot on the trip. And because this is the headwaters, all the water from Wapak goes north to the Maumee and goes up into the Great Lakes. All the rivers south of Wapak go to the Ohio River. We're on the divide. And so when they came down, anyway, it was all picked over, and beads like that, they'd be picked over. Only thing that'd be left in the guy were just like simple black and white beads. There weren't any of those colored ones were really coveted by the Indians. Jim did most of the work down there at the second council hall, just down where I told you that Doring's Hardware was, but the Eagles Club bought that building, tore that down, and when they tore it down, they knew that underneath there was the second council house. The first council house was across the river from VFW. Second council house was downtown where the Eagles is, on the west end of their building. And Jim went down there when they were excavating it to get ready to do the foundation for that, and hunted, was down there every day, found all kinds of stuff buried there. And the Indians must have buried some stuff, and before they left, they took them out of here in the 1830s, and a lot of that stuff, there's a deer jaw there, there's a brooch, obviously an ornament that they had, there's a bone, that's a bone eating utensil, a fork, bone fork, Indians. There's two little pieces of pipe, of clay pipe, and that would have been 1830s. That's not 17, that's 1830s. That was right when they moved them out. And then the bag is a hunting bag that they carried their powder, or not the powder, their probably bullets and stuff for their hunting thing, for a knife. They might have carried a knife. They usually carried their knives in a bag, not a sheath. They carried a lot of them were folding knives, believe it or not. The first ones were French folding knives. They weren't the big Bowie knife thing. They were like a little pocket knife, maybe 6 inches long, maybe 5 inches long, and it was a folding knife. The French, they've traded those first. Later, Bowie knives and that stuff came later. That's a French rapier sword handle from Pickawilly down by Piqua, and it's brass, and the iron's all completely deteriorated in it. It's all beat up. The guard's all busted off. But it wasn't a big hacking sword. It was a real, like a dirk, a small bladed sword. The other thing on top is a medallion that came out of a fire pit down there we found. And it's a picture of a king, I don't know which one, Philip or something. And it was traded to the Indians, and it was a coin that came from Europe, and somebody had recast it to make those to trade to the Indians. And on the top, that looping thing where you would hang it is a copy of an Iroquois earring that they put on there to attract the Indians for the trade. And Jim, my brother, did all the research. I don't know what it was. He was married to some queen. I don't know the rest of it, but that's what it was. But the Indians didn't know anything about that. They just wanted that big ornament to wear. And the other thing is a belt axe. That's an axe head, a French belt axe, small axe. But you could use it for chopping a tree or something. But it was a weapon. Jim was out on Burr Oak Road, south of town. The guy was putting in a pond. He hit this beaver cuts. Obviously, there was a beaver den there. It was a swampy area. And Jim was out there collecting them. Didn't know how old they were or anything. He was just collecting them and interested in it. And he took a couple down. The road ditch had water in it at the time, and he was cleaning the mud off of it, and a sharp thing went across his hand. And he wiped it off. He looked, and there was a lance point about 2.5 inches long down in the beaver cut, where that cut is on the side of there. It went penetrated in there, and he took it, and we showed it to some experts. They sent it to a place out east, and you can't carbon date stone, but you can carbon date the wood. So when the arrowhead went in the wood, it locked it in time. And they carbon dated it. It came back 11,490 years old. And the information came back. They thought something was wrong with the carbon dating, so they re-carbon dated it, came back with the same exact date. So the arrowhead in there is 11,490 years old in that piece of beaver cut. Anyway, that blew our minds. 11,490 years old. Amazing. Yeah, the Blackhoof pipe. That's the other main thing in there. God, what that saw. That is the Blackhoof pipe. That was passed down through how many hands here? Different people had it. The last guy that had it was named Foos, who was a fireman and collected stuff like that. And he was the last one to have it. Jim got it, and it's Blackhoof's peace pipe, which was smoked. Blackhoof was a Shawnee chief, one of the chiefs here in the area, and that was smoked by all the main chiefs: Tecumseh, Blue Jacket, Cornstalk, Little Turtle, all of them, and way more than that when they had their get-togethers and stuff, their powwow thing. That was a pipe they smoked. They had other pipes too, but that one was Blackhoof's, and it's called it's a stone pipe on the red part. That's called Catlinite, which only comes from one place in the United States, which is Pipestone, Minnesota, on the west side of Minnesota. And the Indians still control that. There's a quarry there where they quarry it out, and they made ornaments. They made everything out of it. It's a soft material like slate. You can work it, and they love those tea. It's called a tea pipe. And but anyway, Lord knows what that saw.